Which electric nail file is better for product removal, infills, and dry manicure? In this video, I'm going to compare 3 different e-files, and looks like we're out of power, which happens sometimes. And luckily, e-files I'm going to use today by Melody Susie are all rechargeable, so we won't even need the power to use them. Nails of my new client that came that day look like this, and this is actually the true story. The power was off and I got really worried, like how can we do nails without electricity? But later I figured that this was actually planned, but I was not notified. So when the client came, we had 2 hours before the power was going to be back. And I'm the kind of person, I really appreciate my time. So instead of just waiting for 2 hours, we decided to start the service. So I quickly relocated my workspace to another room closer to the balcony because luckily it was daytime, so we could use the natural light. I used power bank to power my camera, but most importantly, I used my new Melody Susie rechargeable e-file, which I charged the day before. Let's do the unboxing, and it includes warranty information as well as instruction manual, and e-file itself is so compact and lightweight. So this version is perfect for beginners, students, or for anyone who's just getting started, because I think this is one of the most lightweight hand pieces I've ever had, which in my opinion will be great for beginners. They come in few colors, not just white and pink, so you can choose the one according to your style. You can choose this stand and put it on your table, or you can also put it in your belt. Every e-file we're going to review in this video, they include a set of diamond drill bits as well as additional sand bands. USB Type-C charger. It is going to take you approximately 2 to 3 hours to fully charge it, and then you will have 8 to 12 hours of work before you need to charge it again. Top speed is 30,000 rotations per minute. You can easily switch between forward and reverse just by pressing on the button FR, and you can pause at any time by clicking the power button. Let's try it in action and do product removal. This client has acrylic nails. It's been about 2.5 weeks, and we also have gel and some nail art on top. So first I'm going to file it off and take a look on what's going on underneath. I have a feeling that we may have some product lifting. My original plan was to do this client's nails and to test all 3 electric nail files on that day, but of course I didn't plan the power outage. So this was something unexpected, so I'm sorry that the lighting throughout this video will not be the best because the sun was constantly going out and through the clouds, so it will be changing all the time. I'm using a carbide bit because when I looked at the nails, I had a feeling that they're so thick and I will need some extra coarse bit to file it all off. But then I realized that there's quite a thick layer of gel and some chrome powder on top and probably top coat, but underneath where we have acrylic, actually there's not that much. Which makes me think that if it will keep going like that, we will not have much product lifting on each nail. Then we're going to do infill instead of filing off the product and doing it all over again. This unique experience also gave me an unique opportunity to finally hear how electric nail file sounds and compare them. Because normally when I'm using dust collector, it's way more noisy compared to any e-file, and I cannot really tell if it's noisy or not. But now that I'm not using dust collector because I cannot without power, then we can hear it clearly. This e-file is definitely not noisy at all. I mean, you can easily have a conversation with your client and you will clearly hear everything that they're saying. Since I decided to make it easier and not to bring my manicure table to this another room, we were using a chair instead, and it reminded me of those early days when I started working as a nail tech and I was mostly doing mobile services, and I was in this similar situation so many times. Because guys, you won't believe it, but there are so many people who do not have an actual table in their whole house. So I had to use children tables, chairs, and all kinds of unusual furniture to sit and do the service. And when you just need to sit down, it's fine. But when you need to sit like this for a few hours and you're just a beginner doing acrylic extensions, it was quite hard. I remember after some experience, I had such a terrible back and neck pain for a few days. Oh, and this is my favorite moment, when the piece of product lifting is flying off. When you have a product that is not transparent like this one nude, you also need to file off to make it thinner so you can see through it and make sure you don't have any lifting pockets underneath. This electric nail file is definitely suitable for infill prep, but what about product removal? On another day, I decided to test it on my other client and file off soft gel tip extensions. And I was already sitting in my comfortable place with decent lighting. I think you can clearly see the difference, so it went pretty fast and smooth. For product removal, I usually use almost the top speed, 25 to 30,000 RPMs. First, I filed off the free edge, and then I proceed to top coat and color and file off the tip itself. Some people will definitely think at this point, well, soft gel tips are really thin and easy to remove. What about actual nail extensions? So I decided to test drive it on another client who had polygel nails. It's been more than a month now, so let's try to file this off. This one was not as easy and fast, as I was filing off the free edge, and you can also see some 3D nail art on top. They are so thick, so this is going to take a while. Look at this amount of product. So after we do this, I'm going to file off all the product on top. So if my goal is to remove the product, I always turn the top speed, and then it's also important to choose the drill bit depending on the product you're using. Since we have polygel here and quite a thick nails, I decided to choose the one with blue abrasive mark. Every time I'm testing a new electric nail file and also working with a new client, I usually take it slower. I think you can tell the difference if you've ever seen any of my other videos, because I want to make sure that it's not heating, I'm not hurting the client, so I'm being very careful. When you're removing product, it's important to not stay on one spot for too long. This e-file definitely passed the test, and let's proceed to the next one. Melody Suzy Plus is good for intermediate or advanced users. Unlike the first one with carbon motor, this one has cordless rechargeable motor, and after charging it will give you 13 to 18 hours of work, and the top speed is 35 rotations per minute. But on the outside it is very similar. It also comes in different colors, it also includes some drill bits, and you can easily switch between rotation just by clicking on the button. We still have plenty of nails to prep and product to remove with this first client, so let's get back to work, and I'm going to file off the color, the top coat, and see what's underneath of the rest of the nails. Normally, if we have a little product lifting, let's say near the cuticle, along the sidewalls, but it's not like 2/3 of the nail, it's just the little pieces, and we also have one broken nail. So for me, for now, at this point, it sounds like we can still do infill. Oh no, the moment clouds come out and the sun disappears, it's getting so dark. I would say for me, this is even worse than sitting in a comfortable position when you cannot even see what you're doing. By the way, I would love to read your stories. What were the most uncomfortable conditions that you ever had to do your nails? Looks like we have some product lifting on this nail too on both sides. So remember, whenever you need to file off the lifting, do not rush into it. First, make the product as thin as possible so you can clearly see the borders of the lifting, and file off the product around the lifting first. And then once you get closer to the lifted area, it is going to easily separate by itself. As you know, I love this moment, and also I just enjoy seeing clean nails Once all the product lifting is removed, now we have a product without lifting and we can proceed with the infill. One of the favorite questions from my followers is how long does it take to do infill? And of course it varies on so many things. Let's say if I have nails that don't have any product lifting, only with the top coat on, obviously it's going to be pretty easy and quick. With nails like this, it is going to take longer, and I'm not going to lie, because of the conditions I had to work with, sitting not in my normal comfortable chair and table, of course it is going to take even longer. Now let's talk about the differences between these electric nail files. Since I was comparing them like right away, I can clearly see some differences. Now this one does feel a little stronger and a bit more powerful, so I have a feeling it took me a little less time to remove the product. Handpiece also feels a little different. It's a little heavier. I mean, it's still very lightweight, and compared to most handpieces I work with, I have to say they both are rather light. But the first one, for beginners, this one was truly like a feather, while this one I can feel a little bit. I also have a feeling that this one was a little less noisy. Since with this Melody Suzy Plus, the top speed is 35,000 rotations per minute, this is the speed I used when removing the product. But now we already proceed to the next step, which is filing off the outgrown part of the natural nail and fixing this bump if we have it under the nail. And I'm using carbide needle shaped bead, and the speed is 25,000 rotations per minute. When doing this, make sure that you are not going to create a ridge, because this is going to make your nails very fragile. We do not want to make them thinner in this stress area. We just want to file off the natural nail so it's not going to lift, and make sure that the product is super smooth. Avoid using needle-shaped carbide beads with sharp edges, because you can hurt the hyponychium underneath. I really prefer to use the rounded ones because they're much softer, and even if you accidentally touch client's skin, it will not be as painful. Let's proceed with the next challenge for this e-file, which is removal of soft gel tips, and this one just went so easy, quick and smooth, so it definitely passed the test. But then I did removal of polygel, and OMG, on this particular nail there was so much product. At first I tried 25,000 rotations per minute, but then I realized because we have so much product, it is better to use the top speed here, which is 35,000 RPMs. When you're filing off massive amounts of products like this, be careful. Actually, we have more possibilities of heat spikes. Because of the thickness of the product, it may heat more. So be careful and always change the direction and position of your drill bit. Let's say you're filing off some product on the left side, then you switch to the right, and then you go back and forth. Do not stay on one spot for too long. It was not super easy or fast because it's quite a work, but this e-file is definitely doing its job, and most of the time you will not really need to deal with that amounts of product. So if you're looking for electric nail file and you need to do some product removal or infills, and you're a little more than a beginner now, you feel like you do have some skills, then this electric nail file is definitely for you. Also, you will really benefit of the longer work time before recharging, especially if you have some clients or you need to work a long day. Meanwhile, let's proceed to our first client, and now we need to do dry manicure. First, I'm going to push back the cuticles with orange wood stick, and I can already tell that it is going to be a challenge because we have some hangnails. We have some overfiled nail plate on some nails too, so I'm going to be very careful, very gentle, and I will be using the speed about 16,000 RPMs. I don't mean to drop some spoilers at this point, but if an e-file already passed the test of infill prep of product removal, then it is definitely going to be suitable for dry manicure because normally it requires less power, because we're using softer beads, it requires less speed and less power. When dealing with damaged nails, you need to be careful around rings of fire. You need to focus mostly on the new dry skin, on the cuticles, on pushing back the sidewalls, and try to avoid parts that are already overfiled. At this point, I was getting a bit tired because sun just kept going in and out, and at some points it was so dark. And when doing dry manicure, it's so important to be able to see every single detail. You need to understand every single move of your bead, whether you're touching the nail or the skin or you're pushing that. And once you're working like blindfolded, you cannot see it, you will definitely not get the expected result. Sometimes we may notice some color leftovers that are so close to the cuticles, and you can definitely use this flame-shaped diamond bead to remove them, but keep in mind, once you do that, they're going to clog pretty fast. So it's nice to have an additional drill bit if you will need to change it throughout the service. Once I'm done cleaning one side of the nails, I switch to reverse mode and do the opposite side. I'm not just pushing back the cuticles, I'm also working on the sidewalls and pushing back the cuticles, so it is going to be much easier to trim it. But in this case, I'm not even sure there will be something to trim, maybe mostly just these little pieces of hangnails. Yes, we're definitely doing fill instead of product removal, which means I'm not planning to do any filing or shaping afterwards. So I need to prep the nails now. We need to file off the surface shine of this outgrown part of the nail. We need to smooth out the surface because in some areas we had product lifting, so we need to make sure that it's all smooth. We need to reshape the nails, so if the client wishes to make them shorter, we need to do this at this point, but we decided to keep the length because it looks really nice. They're not too long. I just want to make sure that they're matching, they're identical, and all symmetrical. We tested 2 electric nail files so far, and what about the last one? Finally, we have a brushless e-file Melody Suzy Pro, which is perfect for advanced users. On the outside, this electric nail file looks very similar to the previous ones, but don't get fooled because this one has brushless motor, which means it's all electronic. It requires only 3 hours of charging and will hold up to 10 to 15 hours of battery for work. Not gonna lie, when I started working with it, I could feel the difference right away. First of all, it's the sound. I could barely hear it working. It is so quiet compared to traditional motors. At some point, I was even wondering, like, is this thing on or not? The top speed is 40,000 RPMs, which means when you need more power, let's say to remove the massive amounts of product, you can definitely do that. It is recommended for advanced users, salons, and professionals. And I think that I'm going to use this e-file a lot as my rechargeable portable e-file. Even when I'm filing off the natural nail underneath, like I'm doing now, it takes a little less effort and less time, but I'm also using a high speed, which is 28,000 rotations per minute. That's why it's recommended for advanced users, because you really need to feel and not be afraid to work at high speeds to get the most advantages of this electric nail file. I always encourage all of my clients to file off the outgrown natural nail underneath because I think it doesn't look very clean, and once we file it off, we will not have to deal with product lifting. But sometimes some people still wish to grow their natural nails, which is understandable, but in this case we still should not neglect this step. First, we still need to clean the surface underneath. We need to make sure that the product is smooth, and I recommend to clean the natural nail too, just not file it off completely. Then we proceed to dry manicure. I'm using the same speed, which is about 16,000 rotations per minute, but now I have a feeling that it is going to take a little less time, as now I'm working a bit faster with this e-file. I'm doing nails for 20 years now, but when I started, I remember that I wanted to get the most powerful electric nail file for me. And now, when I have way more experience, I can understand how great it is that now we have brands like Melody Susie who offer different kinds of electric nail files that are suitable for different levels of the skills. Because when you're a beginner, when you're just getting started, you don't really need that much power. Let's say if you're a DIY nail enthusiast and you're planning to do only dry manicure and gel overlays for yourself at home, and every once in a while for your friends and nobody else, it really will not make sense to invest in professional electric nail file because you will never really use all that power. It's kind of the same thing as buying Lamborghini when all you need is just doing grocery shopping once a week. But it's not only about that. It's not only about the unused potential, but also sometimes you don't really need that much power. When you have it, you can accidentally damage your skin or nails. Compared to when you have a moderate amount of power, this is exactly what you need to achieve clean manicures, clean cuticle work, and product removal. Meanwhile, it's time to wrap up the dry manicure. I proceed to the opposite side, switch to reverse mode. The speed is still about 16,000 rotations per minute. Push up the cuticles, and we also have one broken nail, so we will need to do extension on this one. And before we proceed with the nail prep and product application, let's put this Melody Susie Pro electric nail file to another test, which is product removal. First one, we have soft gel tips. I'm using 35,000 RPMs, which is almost the top speed. And as you can see, it's pretty smooth, easy, and quick. It feels like the knife is cutting through the soft butter. Obviously, since this electric nail file is way more powerful, it's not going to be a problem to file off such a thin application. But what about polygel sculptured nails that are way thicker than that? I feel like this is the right moment to test the highest speed that we have, which is 40,000 rotations per minute, because this thumb is pretty thick. So let's see how it goes. And yes, it is working. It feels so easy and so smooth. So this is the electric nail file you're looking for if you have client, if you have advanced skills, if you're working a lot, if you're dealing with the piles of products like this, then this is definitely what will work the best for you. Because it has a brushless motor, usually it takes a little time to get used to it. If in the past you mostly worked with traditional e-files, like electric car, it feels so unusual because it's so quiet, like you can barely hear it. But once you get a little used to it, you will realize how powerful it is. It also has less vibration, but because of its power, you also need to hold the client's finger really tight to make sure you will not damage the nail. Do you see this big white bubble under the product? This is product lifting. When you see something like this, it will not really make sense to try to do infill. We need to take it all off because it's lifting all the way to the free edge. So first I'm going to file off the product from the top all around it, and after that we will see how easily this area is going to separate. Bubble lifting like this may appear for many different reasons, but this client shared that she had couple infills in the past. So I have a strong feeling that there was little lifting that was not fully removed, and then it was sealed with a new product. And once we have that, we will have lifting that is slightly growing over time, and then it simply turns into the bigger lifting. Be careful when filing the area on top of the product lifting, because sometimes this can happen, which is not that big of a problem, but your drill bit may get stuck in this lifted area, so just be careful. I'm trying to file off the product all around it first, so then the lifted area will simply separate easily. From time to time, you may notice that I'm touching the client's nail plate to see if it's hot or not, because I want to check for heat spikes, and this is safe and okay to do only if you're wearing protective gloves just like me. Besides this big bubble in the center, we also have a smaller lifting, so we need to take them all off. And when you have nails with lifting of that amount, I recommend you to file off the entire product, because this product is definitely old, so it's just better to renew it and start from the scratch. Finally, when we're almost done working on this lifted area, we get to do the most satisfying part, is when I slightly open the door with orange wood stick and the lifted part simply comes off. And then with the same carbide drill bit, I'm going to remove the remaining product. Removal is finished. Melody Suzy Pro definitely passed the test, and now let's finish up with our original client. Do you guys see the difference now? How the light is different? Finally, the power was back, and you cannot even imagine this feeling when you can come back to your favorite comfortable workspace, sit on your chair, turn all the lights, turn the camera on, and it just feels like a vacation after that. Like seriously, you can see everything, you can sit comfortably. So I just enjoyed this second part of the service. I didn't really need to trim much of the dead skin, so I just slightly worked on the corners, on the hangnails, to make sure that it's all nice and clean. Just take a look at these clean nails free of lifting. As you can see, on some nails we barely had any lifting, on some nails we had more, but now it's all clean and ready for the product application. I applied dehydrator and non-acid primer only on the outgrown part of the nail, but if you will touch some of the product, don't worry. And then I apply base coat and cure it for 30 seconds in LED. Now I need to fill the areas that are missing the product, which is cuticle area on some nails, sidewalls, and I need to rebuild the apex. And I decided to use hard gel to do this. By the way, this is not a regular color. It looks like nude with a little shimmer, but once we go outside and have some UV exposure of the sun, the color is going to change. So I make sure that I build the new structure, that I cover the sidewalls and rebuild the apex. Normally this process is super easy, fast and smooth, as we already have the surface that we prepped. I already did the filing and shaping, so I will not need to file or shape them afterwards. If your client is able to sit still throughout the entire surface. But it was pretty long, so on one nail the product actually flooded the sidewall just a little bit, and I really wanted to fix it. So that's why we need to take off the sticky layer and buff the surface of the nail. This is the one I wanted to fix. Maybe it's not that big of a deal, but you know, I'm a perfectionist and I really want everything to be nice and smooth. Because of this incident with power outage, we already spent quite a lot of time, so we decided one of the most simple and fast nail art techniques, which is using stickers, and I added some quotes such as "so many things" or "listen to the heart on her nails." You can clearly see these words because they're on a light background, but remember, this is a color changing gel, so after we seal it with a glossy top coat and go outside, this is not going to be as obvious. You can find the links to all 3 electric nail files that I highlighted in this video in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. If this is your first time here on my channel, consider subscribing, as I post nail art tutorials just like this one every week. See you in my next one. Goodbye.